Okay, here we go. And a 1, 2, 3, 4. Welcome everyone to the Life Point Table Talk podcast. My name is Jason, and I am joined today by my brother Tyler.
Hello, hello.
And we are coming in at
hot.
week 45.
That's
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Week 45. And today we are going to continue in Jeremiah. We will finish Jeremiah and get into some more joyous Lamentations. And we are starting into one of my favorite books, Hebrews.
Yeah, so good.
Hebrews. And so quite a bit to cover here today. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in and going through the Word with us. So let's jump into it, shall we? Okay. So let's see here. We are starting in Jeremiah. We are doing Jeremiah 40 through 52. Then we'll do Lamentations 1 through 5. Jeremiah, I think last week, it finally happened. They finally came. Most of the book was him giving warnings forever, over and over. I think it was like 20, it says at one point 23 years straight of warnings.
Oh, wow.
That they had. And it finally happened. They broke through the walls and the gates and came. And we saw the demise of Jerusalem and Judah, and they were sent into exile. So we bring up here, so they've taken over, the Lord speaks to Jeremiah, we're in 40, after the captain Nebuzaradan set him free. So he found favor. I don't know, because he was prophesying that they were going to win. Somehow he found favor with these guys.
Yeah.
The captain took him aside and said, the Lord your God threatened this place with disaster, and now it has come because the people sinned. They did not obey. The captain seems to know all this stuff. I set you free of your chains. You can come with me to Babylon, and I'll take care of you, or you can go free wherever you choose. Jeremiah goes to Gedaliah, and that's a person, he lives with him and stays and lives among those who are left in the land of Judah. So he goes to Judah, basically. Many Judeans who were scattered heard that the king of Babylon had let some people stay in Judah. He had made this fellow Gedaliah governor, and so they returned under him. And we get into chapter 41. It's still crazy there. So this
Some treachery going
treachery,
on.
yeah, immediately. Ishmael, who had been King Zedekiah, chief officer, comes. He acts like he's going to have a meal, or they do have a meal with Gedaliah, and him and his fellow soldiers go to the meal, and they actually kill Gedaliah and the other Judean soldiers, and some of the Babylonian soldiers who were there as well. And so Ishmael murders the group. Then he murders another group of mourners.
And throws them all in a well.
Yes.
A cistern.
And
is this the one where they're like, oh, by the way, this is the well that King Asa made?
Yeah.
Just a little aside.
Right.
Little historical.
Threw all the bodies in there. So this is going to be trouble because they had Nebuzaradan had put Gedaliah in authority, and Ishmael goes in and takes it. And
it's like watching House of the Dragon. on
Yeah, it just
HBO.
never ends.
Yeah, it's
This
just this
stuff.
constant.
Yeah, somebody takes over, and then somebody betrays him, and somebody betrays him.
Yeah.
And so, get into, let's see, chapter 42. There's another group, Johanan and a group of army officers. They hear what has happened, and they go and confront Ishmael. And they rescued. So Ishmael took all the people, I guess, or a big group of people who were there, women and children, and was leading them off. And so this other, I'm guessing he was a general or something, Johanan, comes and rescues the people. They really didn't want to be under this guy, Ishmael. Ishmael escapes. So now the group, so this is a group of people sort of left over, the Judeans who were left over after the attack of the Babylonians. And so they are thinking of going to Egypt, and we get into chapter 42. They go to Jeremiah, and they ask him to ask God to tell them what they should do. So Jeremiah goes and prays, and then he comes back to them and he says, if you go and try to settle in Egypt for safety, war and starvation will catch up with you, and you will die in horror. Do not go to Egypt. And we get in chapter 43, of course.
Egypt.
They say, you're lying, after he literally was just proved right.
Yeah.
You might want to listen to that guy. I think they thought and he kind of seems like he is in cahoots with the Babylonians because they were super nice to him.
Who's Jeremiah?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, well, yeah,
And
he
they thought
just
a couple different times he was, like, when it talks about when he bought the field, how they thought he was going to be with the Babylonians and be on their side or whatever. So they say, you want to hand us over to the Babylonians. And of course, they gather everyone together, all the officers, all the people, men, women, and children, and they go to Egypt. They end up in a town called
Taphanes.
Jeremiah follows them there. He does another, I don't know what you call this, exhibit. God has him go bury these large stones in the mortar, the pavement.
Demonstration.
Yeah, demonstration in front of Pharaoh's residence. I will bring my servant Nebuchadnezzar, and he will set his throne on these stones. He will attack Egypt, and the people will die. So it's almost an immediate.
He does these throughout the book.
Yeah, it's another.
They're always amazing.
It's
my
like
favorite's going to be at the end.
He's been doing this for
51.
Judah and Jerusalem, and now he's going to Egypt and doing the same thing.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating. Chapter 44, the Lord speaks to Jeremiah again about the Judeans living in Egypt. They're disobeying, and these guys.
Yeah, and it's amazing to me. I love that the Bible's so incredible. You just see all these repetitions throughout.
Yeah.
And we're in week 45 now, so you just see it constantly, and it reminds me of the children in the wilderness, and we're going to see this in our Hebrews reading too. It's like they're always trying to get back to Egypt.
Yeah.
Like this place that was so oppressive, and it literally put them in slavery and just not good, and they're just anything but to turn to Yahweh and trust Him.
Yeah.
Like they'll want to, I love that line, and we want to go back to our potted meat that we read many weeks ago. We had potted meat. Don't you remember the potted meat?
Just going there, they immediately are sacrificing to other gods.
Yeah.
And it gets
and that's what it means.
Specifically,
to go to Egypt means to go to their gods. You're turning from the one true, most high living God and going to them.
Yeah. What is it?
You continue to burn.
Queen of Heaven.
Queen of Heaven.
Yeah.
The best. So, yeah. Oh, my gosh. Huge rabbit hole there.
Yeah.
Yeah, continuing, it says here, continuing to burn incense, to serve other gods. whom they had not known, neither you nor your fathers.
And so Jeremiah goes, he listens to the people, he calls them out, especially the women for some reason. It talks about they had made vows in their sacrifices. Almost all of you will die in war, and you will know that I have brought this disaster on you.
Yeah. Fall by the sword or famine.
And so we get into 45. Again, Jeremiah has Baruch write down on the scroll. Now it says the 4th year of Jehoiakim as ruler of Judah. Not totally sure on the timeline here.
Yeah, it bounces. These stuff that's not always chronological.
So it's talking about how he's feeling hopeless. Again, how he's going to uproot what he had planted. He's bringing disaster on all humanity. It jumps back to this other sort of motif.
Which is fitting because all throughout Jeremiah, from the very beginning, it says that Jeremiah's commission was to speak over nations and kingdoms, to uproot, tear down, destroy, overthrow, build, plant. Just that language all the way throughout.
Yeah.
Start to finish.
Yeah, and it's crazy because it's not just Judah and Jerusalem. It's a whole bunch of them.
No, oh my gosh, we're going to see
Nebuchadnezzar takes over the whole world, pretty much. It's crazy.
And we're going to see in the end of Jeremiah, there's going to be woes to all of them.
Yeah. 46, again, the Lord's message to Jeremiah about the nations.
Yep, this one's against
Speaks
Egypt.
about Egypt and Pharaoh, Nebuchadnezzar's going to come in and defeat you. There's a long sort of warning. And a very similar warning to what had come previously to Judah and Jerusalem.
Right.
They're going to be overtaken. Make an announcement throughout Egypt, prepare for battle. But in there, he does say, I will rescue the descendants of Jacob.
Yeah.
They will return from far away, and I will completely destroy the nations where I scattered you. Which is interesting, that motif. You're talking about repeating. It's the same thing. The Jews end up in Egypt, and it's almost going to be like, get out of here, because it brings on.
Yeah.
If you try to enslave them, it eventually brings on disaster on the people there.
Totes.
Chapter 47. Now there's a message to the Philistines. They're also going to get it. They're going to be overwhelmed. The whole country, everyone in the country will cry out. Chapter 48, he speaks to Moab, Nebo, and Carathaim will be destroyed. Those were cities. Moab, sorry.
Yeah.
Same deal. Destructive army's going to sweep through, destroy the city, calls them out, arrogant and prideful.
Yeah.
49, he speaks about the Ammonites.
Yeah, which is Moab and Ammon. I believe those are the two. Those are the children that Lot had when they tricked him, slept with him, his daughters.
Yeah. There's a interesting history there with them.
Yeah, it's amazing. Just that thread throughout.
Yeah. He says, do you think there are no people of Israel remaining? You took possession of God and live in his cities. Because of that, the time is coming when you will come to ruin. Israel will take back its land.
Out. And it's funny you say that too, that line, because it got me to thinking that the way that our Bible is arranged, the historical books are all together. So after Kings and Chronicles, we read Ezra and Nehemiah, which is the return from the exile. So it reminds me of like a movie like Pulp Fiction or something that's out of order.
Yeah, it jumps around.
It jumps around, but in a sense, it's kind of cool because you see you already seen them come back from exile.
Yeah.
So it helps me at least to understand what's going on a little better.
Yep.
It kind of paints a broader, richer picture for me.
Yeah.
Like,
I think,
wow.
yeah, reading Isaiah and Jeremiah after the fact is interesting, because you kind of know the context fully.
Yeah, and in Ezra and Nehemiah, they came back, but their heads were kind of hung low, and
cool
some
too,
wept, some cheered.
But it did that too, even in the story of Israel, the way it'll tell it, and then it'll tell it again.
Yeah.
But a little bit details are different, more details and stuff like that.
Yeah, you're seeing it out of order, but it's kind of like I said, it paints a richer picture at times.
Yeah. Chapter 50.
Oh my gosh.
Now he calls out Babylon.
Yeah, 50 and 51. I counted that just because of how long it was. 110 verses.
Oh my goodness.
Which makes sense though, because this whole book's been it's just been reaching this climax with Babylon.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that at the end, but wait a minute. Wait a minute. Babylon's going to get it too.
Yep. You will be captured. A nation from the north will attack Babylon and lay her land to waste. And then Israel and Judah will return home with tears of repentance. So I looked a little bit at it. It's basically Persia who's coming.
Cyrus.
They were called a different name at that time.
The Medes, maybe?
They use it in this verse. I forget where it is. But it's Persia, eventually. That's what it's called. Destruction will come on Babylon like I destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. It's really interesting because God is calling Nebuchadnezzar his servant. He's using them to punish Israel in a sense, but then they must have also gone too far in what they did because he calls them out on it. 51.
Yeah, in 51, he calls Babylon. He says, I love this, and it's the Legacy Standard Bible. He says, "You are my instrument of shattering."
Yeah.
And the ESV says, "My war club."
Yeah.
My weapon of war.
You are rich in plunder. It's time for your lives to be cut off. They will swarm you like locusts. Yeah, war club. That's the one I say.
War club, yeah. It's amazing.
So he's calling people to get out of Babylon. It's coming to ruin. Babylon must fall.
Oh my gosh, and I love this too. This is another one of those demonstrations for Jeremiah.
Yeah.
He says, "Write this in a single scroll, all the calamity which will come upon Babylon. Take these words which you have written." And then it says, as soon as you finish, tie it to a stone and throw it.
Yeah.
into the middle of the Euphrates.
Yeah. Yeah. And tell them.
Just so shall Babylon sink
and
not rise again.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
He's always got these visual aids
going
for him. Yeah.
Sploosh. Oh, man.
Very dramatic.
So good.
Let's see.
It's kind of the ending of the actual, kind of oracles. Thus far are the words of Jeremiah. It ends with 51.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you get a little kind of history
52,
lesson.
there's another wrap up there, specifically, which really was the kind of the climax for me was Zedekiah.
Yeah.
Which is so...
Oh, my God. Talk about House of Dragon.
Intense,
Game of Thrones.
Man. Yeah, they're escaping. Okay, let's read it through here.
Yeah,
this is 52. It's called The Record of the Fall of Jerusalem, which is just epic.
Yeah.
Epic and the fall of Jerusalem, like it really happened. Zedekiah was 21 when he became king over Jerusalem. He did what displeased the Lord. He rebelled against the king of Babylon. When Babylon came against Jerusalem, they built siege ramps all around it. There was famine in the city. Eventually, they break through the city walls, and all their soldiers tried to escape. But the Babylonians chase after them. They capture him. They put to death all of his sons in front of him.
And it's literally the last thing he will see.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because
and then they put his eyes out. They put both his eyes out. They bind him in chains. And he is imprisoned until the day he dies.
I love it. It's so open-ended, too. I don't think there's any real record of his actual death. It's just one of those let off
And then
blinded.
the captain shows up of the Babylonians, Nebuzaradan. He burns down the temple, the royal palace, all the houses in Jerusalem. They tear down the walls. Um, he leaves behind the poor. He gives them fields and vineyards. And all of that is specific because we see all of that rebuilt.
Yeah.
Everything we just mentioned,
Yep.
The temple and the walls. They break the pillars. They take all the bronze. They take all the treasure out of the temple, take it to Babylon.
With a very small number of people, less than actual numbers.
And then they add this in the 37th year of exile. King, is it evil? Evil?
Oh my gosh, evil Merodach.
Is it evil Merodach?
The best.
Of Babylon.
I
so
forget
he's the
my
new
commentary.
king.
It's that word means something else, but
It's not evil,
equally,
right?
No,
Like evil,
but
evil.
I can't remember what it is. But it's not great.
So he pardons King Jehoiakim of Judah. This is interesting.
Yeah, with an N.
He has a different experience there. He spoke kindly to him and gave him more prestigious position than any other king. He would take off his prison clothes and eat daily with the king for the rest of his life.
And this is how Kings and Chronicles ended too. It's like that little tiny ray of hope that Jehoiakim was treated this way, and that there's just this little glimmer of hope of that remnant.
Yeah,
of the numbers right above it, it gives the 3,000, the 4,600 in all.
Right. That's
the
a
Jewish
big one.
people that were exiled. Yeah, 745.
Specific number.
Specific number, but there's just that little. Just remember that God's always had this remnant.
Yeah,
He's always had this one little group of people that He can continue that thread to Jesus in and through.
So that number, it's like, I don't know what to do with those numbers. Like, is that?
Yeah, I think that
Does that mean that there had
those
to
are
be
above my pay grade.
way more people there? So
And some stayed, and some went other places. And
yeah. So that's the end.
And fittingly segues right into Lamentations.
Lamentations. So these have titles. Each one, they're like stanzas. They're like
it's like poetry.
Yeah,
That's the
form of
Hebrew
poetry.
alphabet. 22. Except the middle one's 66.
Yeah, I'll just read through it. The general. They also have generic titles. So this one, number 1, Lamentations, chapter 1. The prophet speaks. Jerusalem, once crowded, lies deserted and lonely. The city is like a widow. The queen of nations is now a slave. So these are lamenting what has just happened. What's happened to Judah and Jerusalem. The people of Judah are slaves in a foreign land with no rest from sorrow. The gates are deserted. The women are raped. This gets pretty graphic here, just telling you some parts of this.
Yeah.
And let me say this. For the scriptures, we were talking about this the other day. It's like some of this is as intense as it gets because it's just what happened.
Because it was as intense as it gets.
Yeah, it's part of what I feel like with the scriptures gives it to me some credibility is that it will take head on the brutality as much as the beauty.
And we were talking too the other day. What's fascinating to me as well is both in Jeremiah and Lamentations, these are things that Moses said specifically would happen in the end of Deuteronomy.
Yeah.
If you do not trust in Yahweh, you go after other gods, you are not true to the covenant, this exactly will happen.
Yeah.
Including this vile, just unimaginable stuff.
Yeah.
He says it word for word.
Yeah.
And it happens.
Yeah, so this is it's atrocities. That's happened, and he's mourning this. They're lamenting what has happened, and so he talks about it. Zion's glory is gone. Jerusalem's sin makes it a joke. It was tragic when Jerusalem fell. Everyone in the city groans looking for food. They trade all their valuables for scraps. Jerusalem shouts to God for help, but you sent fire on us. You let Judah be trampled. We're flooded with tears. We reach for help, but no one comforts us. Then the title is Jerusalem Speaks. The Lord was right. I refused to obey. Now look at my sufferings. My heart is broken. The people are slaughtered. Don't let these evil deeds escape your sight. I've lost all hope. Chapter 2. The Lord was like an enemy. The Lord was angry. He disgraced Zion. The Lord had no mercy. He wiped out the whole army of Israel. He attacked like an enemy. He shattered his temple. He wiped out the meeting place. He rejected the priests. The Lord tore down the walls. The gates have fallen. The women just stare at the ground. This one got me. Their eyes are red from crying. My stomach is in knots. Children lie helpless, begging for food and drink. The child slowly dies in his mother's arms. Zion, how can I comfort you? How great is your pain? How can you be healed? Your prophets deceived you. Deep in your heart you cry to the Lord. Now let your tears overflow day and night. But then it changes tone a little bit here. At the end of chapter 2, don't lose hope. Get up and pray for help all through the night. Pour out your feelings to God. Beg him to save your people. They are starving to death in the streets. Think about it, Lord. Have you ever been this cruel? Is it right for mothers to eat their own children? Is it right for priests and prophets to be killed in the temple? Young and old dead in the streets. You were angry and invited the enemy. The enemies killed my children, my own little ones. So that this is part of it where they're calling out to God for what Babylon has done, where it gets a little weird because God obviously used Babylon, but then there's certain things they did, I think, which he didn't approve of. I don't know which is which exactly. They had wrath coming on them, but I don't know if the extent of it, because they crossed the line somewhere, the Babylonians, the way they treated them. We'll say it seems like Jeremiah wrote Lamentations. Some believe that. They don't know for sure. Speculation there. Chapter 3, the prophet speaks. I have suffered much because God is angry. He chased me into the dark. He caused my skin to waste away. He crushed my bones. I prayed for help and he refused. I am a joke to everyone. He made me eat gravel.
Oh my gosh.
I can't even remember happiness. He's turned my life sour. And then he turns. Then I remember something that fills me with hope. The Lord's kindness never fails. If he had not been merciful, we would have been destroyed. The Lord can be trusted to show mercy each morning. Deep in my heart, I say, the Lord is all I need. I can depend on him. The Lord is kind to those who trust him. It is good to wait patiently for the Lord to save us. I don't know what the translation is here. I forget. Oh, it's jumping around translations.
Which verse?
I'm not sure. It's the one about they. This one says, being rubbed in the dirt can teach us a lesson. I forget what it is, which verse it is. Basically, it was good for them to learn from this. We can learn from the insults and hard knocks. It is good for a man to bear a yoke while he is young, I think is another one. Translation of it. Um, Let the person sit in silence when disciplined. The Lord will not reject us forever. He causes grief, then he has compassion. I thought this was he is not predisposed to afflict or to grieve people. The Lord does not approve of crushing prisoners and depriving rights or defrauding someone. Let us examine our ways. We have blatantly rebelled. Now our enemies gloat over us. I call your name from the deepest pit. You have heard my plea. Do not close your eyes to my cry. You said, do not fear. You redeem my life. You hear their taunts. They mock me in song. Pay them back. Curse them in anger. Eradicate them. Very similar verbiage to some of the Psalms here.
Mm-hmm.
Chapter 4. The prophet speaks. Gold has lost its luster. Jewels are scattered in the streets.
Oh my gosh, I love this one. By translation that I was looking at, it says, how dark the gold has become, how the pure gold has changed. And this part really got me. It said, the sacred stones are poured out at the head of every street. The precious sons of Zion, weighed against fine gold, how they are regarded as earthen jars, the work of a potter's hand. And it made me think the sacred stones, precious sons of Zion, and what once was and now is, it made me think of like the priestly garments with all those majestic on the ephod, the breastplate that represented the 12 tribes of Israel.
Yeah.
Just this fallen, what should have been aspect is now just this.
Yeah, it's also
this
like when civilization falls apart.
Yeah,
these things.
It's like I am legend.
They lose their meaning.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean it. They're begging for food. They need food. They don't need gold. You know.
Yeah.
Reminds me, there's a scene in what was it? The one it was about Pablo Escobar, and you know he had all this money, all this cash, and he was on the run. And at one point, they're really cold, and he has a big bag of cat. It's like the money didn't even mean anything, and he's burning the money just to stay warm.
Just to stay warm.
Yeah. Like when the disaster comes like this, like the essentials become essential. Like the regular stuff, currency changes. So let's see. Infants are thirsty. Children beg for bread. Those who grow up with expensive clothes are dying in the streets amid garbage. Those who died by the sword are better off. Here's another one. Tender-hearted women cook their own children for lack of food. The kings thought that they would never enter the gates, but they did. The Lord scattered them. Under his protection we will survive under the nations. Rejoice and be glad, because judgment also comes for Edom and Uz. Zion, you will be punished. Your punishment will come to an end. He will not prolong your exile. Chapter 5. Look what has happened to us, Lord. Our inheritance is turned over to strangers. We are fatherless orphans. Our mothers are widows. We are weary and have no rest. We submit to Egypt and Assyria to buy food. We suffer. We have fever from hunger. Our hearts are no longer having any joy. But, here goes again, turns around. But the Lord reigns forever. Your throne endures from generation to generation. Why do you keep on forgetting us? Why do you forsake us for so long? Bring us back to yourself. Renew our life. I love the way it's reminiscent of the Psalms. That kind of brutal, pouring out your heart, honesty thing, but then also the ability to in this desolation, pouring out his heart, he turns it around. The Lord reigns forever, right in the midst of it, Okay, that, I think 5 was the end of
Yeah,
Lamentations.
that's all Lamentations. Next week, Ezekiel.
Okay. All right, so we are going to jump over, let's see, how are we doing here on time? To Hebrews. And
So good.
One of my favorite books of the Bible. Maybe my favorite. We're not totally sure who wrote it. Some speculation on that. Go down a rabbit hole on that, I guess.
Yeah.
Some of it sounds, whoever it was at least somewhat privy to what Paul was preaching. If it wasn't Paul or one of the others there. Because some of the same motifs kind of come up. Okay, let's just jump into it. So we're not sure exactly who wrote it, but it's definitely an inspiring book.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing. And what really jumped out at me, too, I was reading a commentary by William Lane, and because there's no introduction, there's no to the people of Ephesus or, or Philippi or wherever, Corinth, sometimes it can be lost on you that it was actually written to people.
Yeah.
To certain people in a very real context that were like other communities in the first century that were being persecuted and facing challenges.
Yeah.
And so it's this encouraging letter.
Yeah, there's parts, it reminds me of Romans kind of in the kind of laying things out. But then there are parts where he does get a little specific about people.
Yeah.
He's definitely talking to somebody.
Yeah, definitely. But if you keep that in the back of your mind, some of the maybe a little more challenging parts of Hebrews become a little more palatable because he's talking to people that are facing specific challenges and persecutions and stuff, and he's saying, hey, stick with it.
Yeah.
Finish this race. Trust God. Don't abandon your faith. Don't walk away. Don't give up.
Yeah.
So it helps.
Yeah.
Love it.
Okay, chapter 1. God spoke long ago to fathers and the prophets in many ways. In the last days he has spoken to us with his Son, who he appointed heir of all things and through whom he made the world. He's a representation of his glory. One of my favorites, he upholds all things by the power of his word.
Oh my gosh. It's majestic.
It
really is.
He gets into the rest of this verse on angels. He's better than angels.
And speaking of context, it makes you wonder, like, was there something going on?
He needed to prove this point.
Yeah, like it's so emphatic. And throughout, really, like, was there a teaching? There's something that he's kind of correcting, like, hey, and I know that there was, and we'll see it later really pop up, there was in the intertestamental period, there was a real heavy emphasis on angels.
Yeah.
And when it came to the law and the delivering of the law, that the angels were there with Moses. They helped to deliver the law. You'll see it in Jude. You see it in Peter. It's there's definitely something in the ethos there in the time.
Yeah.
So you kind of wonder if the writer of Hebrews is being a little bit intentional here.
Oh, yeah, definitely. He says, to an angel was it ever said, you are my son, today I have fathered you? Has he ever said, I will be a father to him, and he will be a son to me? Or let all the angels of God worship him? He makes his angels winds and flames of fire.
That's so amazing.
Your throne, God, is forever and ever. The scepter of righteousness is his kingdom. You love righteousness and you hate lawlessness. God has anointed you with all joy above all your companions. Okay, it keeps going. You laid the foundations of the earth. You made the heavens. They will perish, but you remain. This one's my favorite. They will wear out like a garment, and you will roll them up. They will be changed, but you are the same. You will never come to an end. It reminds me of the metaverse or something. He's just putting it away,
Oh,
taking
there's
it
so
off,
much cosmic language.
putting it
It's
away.
incredible.
All right, we're done with that. Who is he said, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet.
Psalm 110 was a go-to
Yeah.
for the New Testament
Yeah.
writers in the early church.
So he's starting off here, sort of emphasizing the...
And of course, the theme throughout Hebrews is better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Christ is better. I mean, over and over again. It's better. This is better. This is better.
Chapter 2, for this reason we must pay attention to what we have heard, lest we drift away.
I love that. That's the exact translation I have. It's a great...
And I love this because there's really something about that initial faith, that initial decision to follow, that there really is something special about that. Where I used to know a fellow used to use the term staying green, how staying green is really important, like staying new, like keeping that newness of faith.
Yeah.
Like he really does emphasize this, and so does Paul. He talks about like, wait, don't forget this thing. Like this is really the point. Like this is real. This, and you've seen that in church over the years when somebody maybe first radically converts or becomes saved, that passion, that zeal, that kind of fire that can be worn out over the years, you know.
Yeah.
Kind of.
So David, it says, remind me of the joy of my salvation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sort of idea.
It's like, hold on to that. You're not wrong. You're right to like be zealous.
And that's what I love when I hear about people's stories of God's grace in their lives. A lot of times it will bring to remembrance what he's done for me. Yeah. And you go back to that moment.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yes.
Yeah, like trying to stay in that, keep that moment alive, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is interesting too. And what came from angels could not be changed, and judgment came from it. It came from angels.
Yeah. From the my says, if the word spoken through angels proved unalterable, every trespass, disobedience received just penalty. How will we escape if we neglect so great a salvation? I think it's talking about the law.
Yeah.
The law versus Christ. And that's
Paul,
what I'm talking about, this idea then that somehow the angels had something to do with that delivering.
Paul talked the same way.
Yeah.
He says, well, it came from angels and to Moses to the like telephone.
Yeah, like God's like, here comes the law.
Like maybe you got some other stuff in there. So is that what you're saying? Like, because this is better because it's directly from the source.
And we're going to see the same thing later with the tabernacle and the temple and the copies and the shadows and the patterns.
Yeah.
Incredible. And the signs and the wonders, various miracles, gifts of the Holy Spirit. I mean, it's just incredible.
Spoken directly